I never thought dating my boss's daughter would lead to his heartbreaking betrayal. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The moment the air grew thick with unspoken truths and my heart crumbled beneath the weight of the facade. I stood there, hands trembling, staring down a spiral of chaos I had never anticipated. Emily was different. The daughter of the empire I worked for, she carried an air of mystery that drew me in like a moth to a flame. Her laughter echoed in the hallways of the office, a sound that felt like sunshine breaking through the grayest clouds. But beneath that whimsical exterior lay shadows flickering in the corners. Shadows that made everyone else nervous. And I, lost in infatuation, ignored the warnings. I had seen the way her father watched us, a hawk poised to swoop down at any moment, his stern brows knitted together like a storm cloud ready to burst. That I remember the way her hair smelled like wildflowers on a dewy morning. It felt like a cure for the monotony that filled my life. Yet, every secret rendezvous buzzed with an electric thrill and a stab of danger. The whispered rumors around the water cooler, the disapproving glances from my coworkers, they painted a picture I refused to see. I thought I was invincible, living a fairy tale. But sometimes, fairy tales are just dark fantasies masked with a pretty bow. Then, the tension shifted. Everything started to unravel. I discovered things I wasn't supposed to see. Late-night phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. Conversations halting at my approach, as if secrets floated in the air, tangible and suffocating. The feeling of betrayal crept slowly at first, like ice settling in my veins. It was hard to breathe, hard to think. I could feel the web tightening around me, each string connecting back to her father, the king of the castle, sitting upon his throne. That I stood in the chilling silence of my apartment, heart thudding, staring at the messages on my phone. My hands shook as I reread Emily's last text over and over. "We need to talk." That alone sent a wave of dread crashing over me. What could she possibly say? Had it all been a dream? Or was the nightmare just beginning? The phone buzzed, pulling me from the spiral of my thoughts, and the screen lit up with a name that made my breath cease. Henry Collins, my boss. A name once synonymous with success now felt like a noose tightening around my neck. I answered hesitantly, the air thick with foreboding. "We need to meet. Now." The urgency in his voice echoed in my bones, a death knell that sent chills down my spine. What did he know? What had he seen? My heart raced as I grappled with fear and confusion. I knew deep down this could change everything. My fingers grazed the edge of the table, the surface cool against my heated skin. I felt the weight of impending doom. Would this be the end of everything? The end of Emily, of us? The clock ticked loudly in the silence, mocking me, as I braced for impact. My heart raced. I had no idea what lay ahead, only that no step could undo the chaos I had walked into. Every moment was spiraling away from me, leading toward something unimaginable, something that felt like the very end of hope. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The cafe was dimly lit, the distant sounds of clinking cups and low conversations blending into a soft murmur that did little to calm my racing heart. I arrived early, nerves coiling in my stomach like a tempest waiting to break. The aroma of bitter coffee wafted through the air, mingling with the sense of baked goods that felt like a cruel reminder of normalcy. I needed to focus, to regain some sense of control, but all I could see was the weight of what was to come. Henry arrived a few minutes later, an imposing figure draped in his usual tailored suit, but today the lines in his face seemed deeper, shadows pooling in the corners of his eyes. He took a seat across from me, the tension palpable as he studied me with a gaze that held both disappointment and something else, an emotion I couldn't quite decipher. It made my skin prickle. "You know why we're here?" he said, his voice devoid of warmth, slicing through the air like a knife. I nodded slowly, the lump in my throat growing heavier. Emily, I began, but he cut me off with a wave of his hand. Don't. Just listen. He leaned forward, the table a thin barrier between us. The board is starting to notice things, your relationship, for one. They think you're a distraction. Each word felt like a punch to the gut. He continued, if they think this, they might act. You're talented, but they won't hesitate to replace you. I swallowed hard, feeling the shame creep up my spine. I won't let them do this. Emily and I, it's not about your feelings. This is business. His voice rose slightly, echoing off the cafe walls as several patrons glanced our way. If we want to keep this company afloat, this cannot be a distraction. Not now. The truth was a bitter pill, choking me as realization washed over me. I had put both my career and Emily at risk, and now that risk was catching up to us like a sprawling shadow ready to engulf every ounce of light. I blinked away the fog of despair, but it had settled in my chest like a relentless weight. Ill end it, I said finally, and the words tasted like betrayal, sour and pointed. Henry shook his head, a tight-lipped smile curling the edges of his mouth, but it offered no warmth. No. That won't help. You need to stay close, see how this plays out. There may be a way to salvage your position if, and only if, things don't blow up before then. As I attempted to process his words, a steely determination began to flicker within me, a small ember igniting against the backdrop of dread. I couldn't just let everything collapse around us. I needed to fight, not just for my job, but for Emily. After our meeting, I wandered the city streets, a disoriented soul desperately searching for a lifeline. My phone buzzed again, and a familiar name filled the screen. It was Emily. My heart raced, my fingers moved over the glass, trembling as I typed a response. Can we talk? Please, I'm at the park, her reply came almost instantly. The sun was beginning to set as I made my way to the park, casting a warm glow that felt almost comforting amid my turmoil. The trees stood tall, their leaves whispering secrets to one another in the light breeze. But hope was fragile, and the looming fear of what awaited me weighed heavily on my chest, threatening to crush me. When I spotted her, sitting on a bench, an ethereal figure caught in the fading sunlight, was as if the world around me melted away. She was staring blankly ahead, her shoulders slumped. I approached slowly, feeling the vibrancy of our shared laughter fade into the distance, leaving only echoes of an imploding reality. Emily, I said softly, and the air around us felt thick with unspoken words. She turned, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, a sadness etched into her features that cut deeper than any knife. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, her voice almost a whisper, but it ricocheted through me like a blaring siren. I was going to. I thought we could still. My voice trailed off, the words barely feeling true in the moment. She shook her head, retreating deeper into the shadows of uncertainty. You were going to end it, weren't you? No lies, no deception. But the truth clawed its way up my throat, choking me as I realized how naive I had been to think everything could remain intact. Henry's opinion doesn't matter, she snapped, a strain in her voice. You should know that by now. I reached for her hand, but she recoiled, standing up as if the weight of our relationship had suddenly become unbearable. I saw the resolve in her eyes falter, cracking open the vulnerable core beneath her bravado. I didn't want to just be another casualty of this off your world, Emily, please. Desperation spilled from my lips as I imagined a future without her. You're not a casualty. You're everything. Her breath hitched at my words, and for a moment, I thought I might see a flicker of hope in her eyes. But just then, an unsettling figure caught my gaze from the corner of the park. A man in a suit, staring at us with a predatory intensity that sent chills spiraling down my spine. I recognized him, one of Henry's trusted associates. What is he doing here? I muttered, panic surging within me as I felt the walls of our safe space close in, suffocating what remained of our connection. Emily followed my gaze, her expression shifting from confusion to realization, and then determination. I need to go, she said abruptly, taking a step back, shadows dancing beneath her troubled brow. leaving me standing there, awash in fears of how deep the betrayal ran, unsure of how this tangled reality would play out. Emily. I called after her, but she was already slipping away, fading into the dusk that I stood frozen, the weight of uncertainty heavy upon my shoulders, the roar of anger and despair pounding in my ears. What had Henry done? Who could I trust? In that moment, I believed I had lost her. The realization stabbed deep. My heart didn't just a cheat shattered. With one final intent gaze at the man still watching from the shadows, dread curled around my heart like a noose tightening with every passing second, whispering that this was only the beginning. As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed in my pocket, and an unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. I hesitated, a sense of dread creeping in. I answered, the voice on the line sending my world crashing down further. Your time is running out. She doesn't know what she's gotten herself into. The line went dead that I felt the ground shift beneath me, reality splintering, as unease settled into my bones. My battle was far from over, and now, the stakes had risen higher than I could have ever imagined. The air was thick with unspoken truths and the scent of impending rain as I stumbled out of the park, each step a reluctant march away from Emily and the heavy uncertainty that hung like dark clouds in my mind. I could feel the weight of the stranger's voice echoing in my ears, an ominous reminder of the precariousness of our situation. Shivers raced down my spine as I replayed our conversation, every word of hurt amplifying the hollow ache in my chest. I pulled my coat tighter around me, as if it could shield me from the emotional storm brewing within. Lost in thought, I barely noticed the droplets beginning to fall until they splattered against the pavement, mirroring the tumultuous state of my heart. My mind drifted through possibilities, ways to protect Emily and salvage what we had, yet each one twisted into dead ends, looming dangers that made me feel as if the walls were closing in. But even amidst the howling wind of anxiety, I felt a flicker of that ember of determination reignite. I had to talk to Emily again, had to explain, to protect her from whatever chaos was looming in the shadows. As I rushed back home, dodging the rain-soaked streets, I pulled out my phone, fingers hovering over her name. But what could I say? Every second that ticked by only compounded the gravity of what hung in the balance. I felt like a moth drawn to a flame, but with the knowledge that every flap of my wings could potentially incinerate everything I touched. When I finally stepped through my front door, the familiar creak of the hinges brought little comfort. The silence felt heavy, thick like fog rolling in on a dark night. I dropped my bag on the floor and reached for my phone again, dialing Emily's number with a resolve that shook beneath the surface. It rang once, twice. My heart raced. Just as I thought she might pick up, the call ended with a flat beep. She wasn't answering. Distraught, I collapsed onto the couch, head in hands, the weight of the world pressing against me. Breaths came out in ragged spurts as I tried to fathom the precarious threads of our fate. Time seemed to stretch painfully as I waited, each tick of the clock more agonizing than the last. Then, as if summoned by the turmoil within, my phone buzzed again, jolting me upright. Emily's name flashed across the screen. I answered nearly breathless, "Emily." But it wasn't her voice that greeted me. Instead, it was the same chilling voice as before, oozing with assurance that felt as cold as ice. "You still think you can protect her? You're far too late." My stomach churned as dread seeped into my veins. "What do you want from me?" I spat, the veneer of control slipping through my fingers. "What does any of this have to do with her?" All I heard was a low chuckle, sinister and mocking. "Keep your eyes open. She'll make her own choices, and you'll need to decide who you really care about when the real storm comes. Just know, it's not just your career on the line." Before I could respond, the line went dead once again, leaving me with a hollow silence that amplified the storm brewing around us. I felt the yearning to protect Emily surge back, crowding my thoughts, but with each pulse of longing, the walls closed in tighter. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was at the center of something far more complicated than I had anticipated. With shaking hands, I took a deep breath and dialed Emily's number once more. "Please pick up," I whispered, each ring feeling like a countdown. Finally, her voice, soft yet strained, responded, "Hello, Emily." But she interrupted with a rush of words, anxiety spiking her tone. "That I am sorry. I wanted to talk when I saw you earlier, but things got complicated. I just found out someone's been spreading rumors about you at work. They mentioned Henry and how you might be the reason he's considering resigning. A sick feeling coiled in my stomach. What? It's not about that, Emily. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm a distraction you can't afford. I don't want to be the cause of your downfall. Her voice trembled, fear flickering through the line. No. You need to listen to me. It's not like that. But as I spoke, my mind wandered to what that enigmatic voice had said. Choices that could tear us apart, then tell me the truth. Her voice grew firm but tremulous, shaking as if desperate to remain steady against a raging storm. What I wanted to tell you was I hesitated, caught in the web of choices that entangled us both. Things are happening, things I can't explain yet. But if you don't trust me, don't know who I can trust anymore. Not even you. The hurt in her words was like a spear to the heart, and I gasped, feeling the root of my apprehension bloom into something sinister. Emily, I pleaded. We can figure this out together. I won't let anyone tear us apart. I could hear her breathing intensify, and a silence hung between us that felt insurmountable, like the gathering clouds above unable to hold back their fury. Just then, there was a knock at the door, a sharp rapping that pulled me from my thoughts. Wait, Emily, I need to go. I'll call you back. I blurted, not waiting for an answer. That I rushed to the door, heart pounding in my chest, adrenaline fueling my movements. A part of me hoped it was Emily, but as I swung the door open, I froze. Standing in the threshold was Henry, his expression shrouded in a darkness that sent a chill of recognition through my veins. He gave me a thin smile, but it didn't reach his eyes, which gleamed with an unsettling intensity that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. Mind if I come in? He said, and it wasn't a question. A tumult of emotions surged within me, and I knew then that my confrontation with the reality I had tried to shield myself from had only just begun. The tension in the room thickened as I stepped aside, allowing Henry to enter, yet my instincts screamed for caution. I locked the door behind him, a small gesture that felt like a futile attempt to contain the storm brewing within. Henry, I didn't expect to see you here, I managed to say, keeping my voice steady despite the frantic thoughts racing through my mind. Every second he stood there, that unnerving smile plastered on his face, made my skin crawl. Neither did I, but I thought it was essential we spoke, he replied, his voice laced with an undercurrent of something I couldn't quite identify. I gestured towards the couch, hesitating as the weight of his presence dominated the space. I began, but he cut me off, his intensity drawing closer. Let's not play games. You and I both know why I'm here. He placed a hand on the armrest, leaning into my personal space, his eyes narrowing. I swallowed hard, feeling the rising panic in my chest. If you're here about Emily, I need you to understand. Understand what? That you're entangled in something you can't possibly navigate alone. The harshness of his words clawed at the last thread of my composure. You should know that this affects more than just your career, and definitely more than your little romance. My heart raced, fear igniting as I recalled the voice that warned me of choices. What are you talking about? I whispered, though I felt the answer coiling ominously in the back of my mind. Think about the moves you've made, the risks you've taken. Would you still be so determined if you knew how deep the waters run? Emily could very well be the first casualty in whatever game is afoot, he said, punctuating his statement with a wave of his hand, dismissing the gravity of his words. Henry, that's absurd. I would never put her in harm's way. I care about her. My voice wavered, defiance battling with desperation. Caring isn't enough. You see, when you put yourself in the sights of my father, you draw attention not just from him, but from those who admire his power. And they don't play fair. A layer of comprehension settled heavily in my gut. Suddenly, Henry's words began to intertwine with the unsettling warnings I had received earlier. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of betrayal, each wave dragging me closer to a dark fate. What do you want from me? I asked, the question sounding smaller than I wished. He studied me for a moment, his expression unreadable. It's simple. I want you to choose. Emily, or your career? Because the longer you stay on this path, the more you jeopardize her. And trust me, I can make sure you're the one left standing when the dust settles. Those words hit me with unyielding force, reverberating in my mind like a cruel echo. I opened my mouth to protest, but the rising tide of emotions left me speechless. How could I make that choice? How could anyone? Just as uncertainty began to envelop me, Henry's posture shifted slightly, the flicker of concern crossing his face in a brief moment of vulnerability. Look, I don't want that. I don't want her to be hurt either. But sometimes, blood runs thicker than water. You need to know what you're really up against. The flicker of kindness disarmed me slightly, leaving me with a single thread of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, he was torn himself. But I couldn't afford to tuck any of that away. My resolve had to be about Emily and nothing else. Emily isn't a pawn in some twisted game you or your father are playing, I replied, fighting through the lump in my throat. I refuse to treat her that way. She deserves better. Henry studied me as if searching for a hint of hesitation, but my determination cemented my words. If you truly care about her, you'll keep your distance, whatever your father's ambitions may be. He straightened, his expression shifting back into that impenetrable mask he wore so easily. You think you can just walk away from this? You're in too deep, and so is she. Make your choice carefully. My father doesn't take kindly to those who fail to recognize the stakes. With that, he turned to leave, but I couldn't let him go without a final confrontation. Henry. My voice cracked through the air, desperation mingling with anger. He paused, glancing back at me over his shoulder, the air thick with uncompleted threat. That if you care about Emily at all, help make this right, I pleaded, realizing how terrified I was of losing her, of letting this web of power and ambition ensnare everything we built. His lips tightened in contemplation, but then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a finality that echoed in my heart. Alone once again, the shadows in the room gathered around me, whispering of the monstrous choices ahead. I felt the grip of fear tighten around my chest as the chilling words of our earlier visitor resurfaced. Every moment drew us closer together into a storm I wasn't ready to face. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone to call Emily again, but as I hit dial, a loud crash outside startled me, followed by frantic screams and cries for help. My stomach dropped, and I rushed to the window, heart racing, only to be met with the horrifying view of chaos unfurling on the street below. An accident or something worse? I couldn't tell, but I couldn't just stand there. It was clear that our reality was shifting, and whatever had been lurking in the shadows had finally come for a reckoning. In that agonizing moment, I realized I might have to run toward the chaos instead of away from it, a choice that could lead to salvation or irrevocable loss. The scene outside twisted my stomach into knots. I should have felt fear, but the sight of destruction ignited something more instinctual within me, a deep need to protect the people I loved. Emily. I could already see her face contorting in worry, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. I shoved my phone into my pocket, resolved to navigate through the chaos. A few strides carried me to the door, but my mind screamed for hesitation. What if Henry was right? What if I was wading into a storm beyond comprehension? My heart drummed a frantic rhythm in my chest as I pushed open the door. The street burst with lifeless bodies in twisted metal and frenzied onlookers trying to comprehend the calamity. I stepped out into the fray, each scream and shout tightening my chest. I needed to find her. She could be anywhere, caught in the tangles of this unexpected disaster. As I ran down the sidewalk, instinct led me. I sometimes wondered if a deeper connection guided me, a tether that pulled me toward Emily. It felt impossibly strong, a gravitational pull grounded in love and urgency. The buildings around me loomed ominously, casting long shadows, but I didn't waver, even as my heart tightened under the weight of dread. I rounded the corner and came upon a crowd gathered around a mangled car. Sirens wailed in the distance, a grim soundtrack to the unfolding scene. My chest tightened as I spotted a familiar figure pushing through the throng. Emily. Relief washed over me, even as I noticed the fear etched into her features as she reached towards the barrier, her hands trembling. Emily. I called out, forcing my way through the chaos. She turned, and the moment our eyes locked, I felt an electric surge of connection, momentarily vanquishing the noise around us. "Thank God!" she cried, rushing to my side. She looked at me, breathless, her worries spilling between us. I didn't know what happened. "A couple of cars collided, and are you hurt?" I interrupted, scanning her body for bruises. "You need to. I'm fine, but look." She pointed towards the intersection where the emergency responders were beginning to work. "There are people trapped inside. They need help." I understood her urgency. Even with all the chaos, a flicker of hope ignited within me. I could almost hear the echoes of kindness that had once intertwined between us. There was a part of me, perhaps deep down, that ached to hold her, to draw her away from the peril. But I also knew what Henry had said: this mess could threaten everything. "Emily, we shouldn't," I began, but was interrupted by a shattering scream from the crowd. A woman burst forth, face pale, eyes wide. "My baby! My baby's still in there!" She pointed frantically towards the wreckage, her voice pierced through the commotion like a siren's wail, every instinct screamed for action. I locked eyes with Emily, who took a determined step forward. "We have to help," she urged, and in that moment, I couldn't dissuade her. I could feel her viewing this as more than an accident. It was a call for humanity, the innate urge to reach out when it mattered most. As I ran alongside her, my mind spun with thoughts of the choices that stretched before us: my career, her safety, the lives at stake. But I didn't have time to deliberate. We were swept into the whirlpool of desperation alongside a group of strangers. When we reached the site, the metallic smell of blood and smoke filled the air, dark realities erupting against the shock of adrenaline flowing through me. Emily's fear ran parallel to my own, but as I turned to look at her, her eyes sparkled with fierce determination. It was electric, grounding us in this purpose. "Help! Somebody help!" The plea echoed from inside the wrecked car, a wail full of despair that reverberated in my chest, to my very core. Without thinking, I grasped a large piece of debris that had fallen across the back door. "We have to get him out!" I yelled, gritting my teeth as I began to push the rubble aside. It was heavy, impossibly so, but I pooled every ounce of strength into my arms. Emily knelt beside me, her hands gripping one of the jagged edges, pulling with all her force. "Together," she urged, her voice steadying me. In that moment, as we struggled together, our breaths mingled with the smoke, a pulse igniting between us that felt like an unacknowledged promise of hope amidst a disarray of despair. Suddenly, a pair of hands joined use: an elderly man, gray and weary, kneeling beside us. "You two grab on!" he shouted, his spirit undeterred by the chaos. With the three of us working as one, we heaved the debris clear, and the door cracked open, releasing a gasping cry that echoed through my bones. That instinct pressed harder within me, a reminder of what I'd been told: choose wisely. But there were no choices here. Only this desperate moment, thrumming with the will to save a life. A light flickered in Emily's eyes as we illuminated the heart of the destruction with our shared strength. As the fragments shifted, the door swung wide. It revealed the face of a young man, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Help me!" he barked, panic-driven. My heart sank as I locked eyes with him, suddenly aware of what was at risk: the reality of my truth crashing down over the reality of his situation. But before I could answer, something deep inside me twisted, a feeling of anguish overtook me, an unsettling connection surged through the remnants of the moment. It was clear that this wasn't just an accident. The sheer brutality of it felt orchestrated, twisted like the frames of the crumpled metal around us. As we pulled him from the wreck, another realization pierced through. What if Henry's warning loomed closer than I thought? What if this was just the beginning of a far more sinister game? Uncertainty clawed at my gut. I stole a glance at Emily as she cradled the young man's face, trying to calm him. In the turmoil surrounding us, I couldn't allow fear to take hold of her. I couldn't lose her. But then, amidst the sirens and chaos, I saw movement in the distance that sent shockwaves through me: a figure lurking in the shadows, a familiar silhouette that recognized me. It was Henry, standing just beyond the periphery, eyes darkened with intent. In that paralyzing moment, I realized this was far from over. Whatever threads had started to unravel would soon bind us in a much darker web, one that threatened not just Emily but everyone I dared to care for. The weight of something unseen pressed down on my chest as I pulled the young man from the wreck. The shouts of the crowd melted into a blur, and in that moment, all I could see was Emily's face, a mixture of fierce determination and the raw edge of fear. It urged me to stay present, to focus on her. Yet, still, a shadow lurked in the corner of my mind, growing larger with every frantic heartbeat. As we pulled the young man into the sunlight, he gasped greedily for air, his face a mask of panic as he struggled to comprehend his narrow escape. Emily knelt beside him, her hands gentle yet firm, murmuring reassurances that I wasn't certain could pierce through the fog of chaos he was lost in. I backed away slowly, heart hammering in a tempo I couldn't control. My eyes flickered back to Henry. His presence was like an electric jolt, a taunting reminder of the unshakable connection of our lives intertwined, and the risks that came with it. The once familiar security of my world now felt like quicksand threatening to swallow me whole. "Are you okay?" I heard Emily whisper again, and the heartbeat of determination pulsed through her voice. "Can you hear me?" What I feared most was the darkness that lurked, not just outside, but within the skirmishes of fate. I had to keep her safe, I owed her that. I glanced back at the crowd, absorbing the chaos around us, the gravity of anguish spilling over the edges. People looked to us, their eyes pleading for help, for direction in this storm. Emily shone like a beacon of kindness among them, their hope hung on the thread of her bravery. It comforted me, even if trepidation clawed at my insides. As sirens wailed ever closer, I found a piece of hope. I sought my courage from her. I turned to the young man once more, helping him rise with a gentleness that contrasted against the urgency surrounding us. But moments of clarity were fleeting. The barest hint of Henry's gaze toward me felt like cold water pouring over my head. His expression was unreadable yet charged with a dangerous energy that made me shiver. "No medical help yet?" I muttered, trying to ground myself, to not let the threads of fear wrap around my heart. Emily shook her head, her brow furrowed in concern, and in that fragile moment, I could see how vigilant she was, becoming a fierce protector in a world gone mad. "Hold tight," she whispered to the young man, squeezing his arm with a tremor of hope. "Help is coming, I promise." And as she spoke, I glimpsed her light flicker, a small embers of humanity against the cold, dark reality of the situation. But in a heartbeat, the corner of my vision caught the unnerving sight of Henry moving through the throng, his movements deliberate and calculated, as if he were weaving his way through a complex tapestry, pulling each string tighter and tighter. Whatever else I knew about him, it only became clearer with every step he took into our chaotic scene. Each stride brought with it the weight of ominous intent. "Stay with him," I urged Emily, my voice firmer now, and twined with an unexpected heat of determination. I needed to confront him. "I'm going to see what's happening with the emergency responders." Her eyes widened, a mix of worry and understanding brimming behind them. "Be careful," she murmured, but her faith in me bolstered my resolve. As I pushed through, maneuvering past the gathering throngs of anxious faces and scrambling medics, the shadows of my uncertainty began to take form. I spotted Henry, his posture radiating a confidence that felt off-kilter with the weight of calamity surrounding us. "What are you doing here?" I called out, trying to keep my voice even. That he turned like I'd drawn his attention from a deep reverie. "I came to see how my daughter was faring." The words dripped like poison, each syllable laced with a smugness that coiled up my spine. He was always 2 steps ahead, and the moment blood flowed was the moment he saw opportunity. "Don't pretend this is just concern for her safety," I challenged, stepping closer, my heart pounding as adrenaline coursed through me. "What are you really after?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Always the perceptive one. Just keep your eyes open, will you? Sometimes the real threats are cloaked in chaos." Every word felt like a dagger, and the weight of it drew me back, shock rippling through my veins. It didn't escape me that he was hinting, imbuing the disaster around us with darker implications than I dared to acknowledge. "What's that supposed to mean?" I seethed, our faces close enough to feel the intensity crackling between us. But the suspicion hanging in the air was just what I didn't need right now. I needed clarity, not obscurity shrouded in betrayal. He leaned closer, his voice a whisper. Let's just say chaos can be created, and people like me always pull the strings. My entire body froze. A wave of chilling realization washed over me, realizing that within the horror of an accident stirred something far more sinister. The reality dripped into my thoughts, unrelenting. This wasn't just a random tragedy, it was carefully crafted turmoil, a reminder that fear was always waiting behind every door. Turning my back on him felt like dispelling an unseen weight, but even as I moved away, anger pulsed through me like wildfire. I had to warn Emily, she was a part of this dangerous game now. But when I whipped around to find her, my heart dropped to my stomach. The scene had begun to shift. Where we had pulled the young man to safety, now the crowd shifted and surged forward, a wave of dread sweeping through. My gaze fell upon Emily, and in an instant, I felt the temperature drop as she stood frozen, eyes locked on something behind me, a ghost of disbelief that draped over her like a thick fog. But before I could register what she saw, a piercing scream echoed from her lips. My heart lurched, dread gripping me like a vice as I turned to follow her gaze. The shadows loomed large, and in that moment, I realized this was just the beginning. Whatever dark designs Henry had set into motion were now closing in around us, threatening to tear apart everything I cared about, and I stood at the precipice, powerless to change the course of fate. At the sound of Emily's scream, a jarring panic shot through my chest, sending me stumbling backward. My heart raced, the world around me blurring into chaos as I sprinted toward her, visions of danger parading through my mind. I clawed my way through the swarming bodies, each step heavy with dread, a lead weight anchoring me to this unfolding nightmare. Emily! I shouted, desperation fueling my voice as I fought the growing tide of fear slicing through me. But the cacophony of the crowd, now trembling at the edge of hysteria, swallowed my voice whole. Each face I passed morphed into a mask of horror, their expressions mirroring my own as I frantically searched for her. I finally broke through the throng to reach her, my breath hitching at the sight that awaited. Emily stood paralyzed, her body rigid, her face was an indecipherable mixture of shock, horror, and fury. I followed her gaze, swallowing hard as the image came into focus. A figure loomed at the center of this chaos, a man mysteriously clad, his face partially obscured by a dark hoodie. He stood atop the remnants of the wreck, looking down upon the panicking crowd, a ghastly calm radiating from his stillness. But it wasn't just the man's unnerving composure that froze Emily in place, it was the gun clasped tightly in his hand, aimed not at the sky but at our feet, sending a collective shudder through the gathering crowd. My stomach churned, bile rising to my throat. Terror wrapped around me, spindly fingers weaving through my thoughts, yet mixed within it was an unfamiliar embers of resolve. I had to act, to protect her. The urge to shield Emily from harm, from the darkness creeping ever closer, swelled within me. Get down, Emily! I barked, shoving her behind the nearest barricade, feeling her tremble against me as I dropped low, the world around us dissolving into chaos. My heart echoed the chaos as movements blurred in an unpredictable dance of fear and desperation. Why is he doing this? She gasped, her voice trembling, barely above a whisper. I felt her fear clinging to me like vines, wrapping around my chest, making each breath a battle. I don't know, I replied, urgency pushing me to keep my voice steady. But we can't stay here. We need to find a way out. My mind raced, conjuring half-formed plans that dissolved as quickly as they arrived. Suddenly, the man atop the wreckage pressed forward, his malicious smile sending ripples of terror through the crowd. I need everyone to listen. His voice was a twisted blend of authority and mania, commanding attention amidst the chaos. You've ignored the signs for too long. Today, I make a point that my heart sank, and I instinctively moved closer to Emily, instinct overpowering logic. Who was this man, and why had he chosen this moment to unleash havoc? The weight of his words pressed down upon me, constricting my throat. We need to find the back exit. I whispered, urgency lacing my words as I gauged the crowd's reaction to him. Fear swept through the onlookers, their collective breaths held tight against the creeping terror taking hold, but just as I prepared to edge backward, something in Henry's words from before reverberated through my mind. Sometimes the real threats are cloaked in chaos. I couldn't shake the feeling that somehow this was connected to him, that he had somehow orchestrated it. Emily caught the turmoil painting my features. "What is it?" she pressed, and I could see it in her eyes. She needed answers, as did I. Before I could respond, the voice of the masked man cut through the noise again, sharper and dripping with menace. "Those who stand with the old ways will find their homes taken from them," the crowd gasped, confusion rippling. I could see their fear inching toward hysteria, faces blanched, hands reaching out for one another, a desperate plea to not face this together alone. I gripped Emily's hand tightly, my resolve hardening. "Stay close," I warned, feeling the solidity of her presence against my side. Together, we would navigate this storm. But even as I spoke, doubt clawed at Muhat. If we couldn't escape this time, the stunned silence shattered once more. A sudden barrage of gunfire erupted from the man's weapon, a warning shot fired into the air, splintering the last remnants of calm. The crowd erupted into chaos, a scatter of bodies pushing against one another in a frantic search to escape. Emily and I were swept into the tide, our hands momentarily breaking free as we were separated in the crush. "Emily!" I shouted, panic lacing each syllable as I fought against the crowd, each step forward seeming to pull me 2 steps back. The sound of terror echoed through the air, a cacophony intertwining with the whimpers of those caught within this nightmare. In that dizzying moment, everything crystallized with horrifying clarity. If Henry was the puppeteer pulling the strings behind the curtain, then the chaos unleashed was merely the beginning of an unstoppable storm threatening to tear apart our lives. As I broke free from the throng, the realization settled within me like stones piling in my gut. This wasn't just about protecting Emily, it was about confronting the darkness that had enfolded us, no matter the cost. And in that heavy moment, as dread sank deeper, a chilling revelation struck. Henry was not just a threat hiding in plain sight, he had orchestrated this chaos for a reason, and I feared the truth would be far more horrifying than the destruction playing out before us. Just ahead, I caught a fleeting glimpse of Emily's face in the denouement of the melee, her eyes wide and terrified, and I knew my urgency had never felt more crucial. I would not let this unravel. But as I reached for her, something drew my attention behind, a chilling presence lingering, and before I could turn, a shadow fell across us both, obscuring the way back to safety. The world narrowed, the revelation resonating loudly in my mind, shattering the frail foundation of trust one had in Henry. And now, he was closer than ever, weaving in and out of the chaos, a dark figure lurking just within reach, laughing in the shadows of the ruin. I stumbled through the chaos, heart racing and mind spinning, desperate to find Emily amidst the torrent of bodies pushing and pulling in every direction. I had seen terror in her eyes, and now it coursed through me like a river, threatening to sweep me under. I fought against the instinct to flee and focused instead on the burning need to hold on to her, to shield her from whatever horror lingered in the air. The gunman's voice echoed in my ears, the madness he unleashed still radiating through the crowd. I felt the presence of the looming shadows growing closer behind me, their weight heavy and full of implications. With every frantic push through the throng of terrified onlookers, I resolved to not only find Emily but also unveil the truth hidden beneath this surreal nightmare. "Emily!" I shouted again, voice strained in the sea of panic. Each second that passed twisted my heart like a knife, ache blossoming with every moment that separated us. Just as I caught sight of a cluster of panicking people, I was shoved to the side, colliding into a solid wall of bodies. Murmurs and cries around me buzzed, a muffled din drowning my desperation, and then, through the madness, I saw her paint a small silhouette, crouched against the wall behind a pillar. Relief flooded me as I carved my way toward her, ignoring the jostle of the crowd, the pushing hands and disorderly shouts. I couldn't lose her, I wouldn't let anything take her from me again. As I reached her, I knelt, breathless. "Emily!" I pulled her into an embrace, holding her tightly as if to drive away the fear that clawed at her heart. Her frame trembled, though I could feel her clinging back, her warmth grounding me. "I thought I lost you," she whispered, her voice breaking, eyes bright with unshed tears. "You won't," I promised, planting a firm kiss on her forehead. "We'll get through this together. But we need to move." As I turned to guide her away from the chaos, a piercing scream erupted from the crowd and the gunman's shadow loomed larger, drawing our attention. A figure caught in the sunlight behind him, a familiar face that twisted my stomach with dread. Henry did my heartbeat faltered as adrenaline surged. It clashed brutally with the creeping realization that Henry wasn't merely standing by. He stood behind the man with the gun, an evil smile creasing his lips as he orchestrated this madness. Was it a twisted game, a cruel spectacle? Instinct warned me, but disbelief overshadowed my thoughts. It felt too insane, but the truth was starting to take shape within the emptiness of my mind, becoming clearer and more horrifying. Beneath the chaos he was weaving, he glanced at me, and for a haunting moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of satisfaction in his eyes. It twisted my insides. Every instinct screamed for me to confront him, to unmask this betrayal before it buried us alive. Here, we have to go this way, I urged Emily, leading her away from that dreadful sight, heart pounding louder than ever. A desperate plan formed and crumbled beneath the weight of horror and uncertainty. We slipped into an alley, shadows cloaking us as I leaned against the cold brick wall, heart thudding a furious rhythm. Emily's breathing was rapid, matching my own, fear etching a sharp line across her brow. "Did you see him?" she gasped, clutching my arm tightly. "Henry is here." "Why would he do this?" "I don't know," I managed, the words scraping past a throat lined with gravel. "But we have to keep moving. If he's here, things are about to get worse." But just as I turned to help her away from the chaotic frenzy, a sudden shout echoed from the main thoroughfare, the chilling voice of the masked man chasing us. "You can't run from the truth. When it's revealed, you'll feel the pain others have suffered." A decision had to be made, and I felt the stakes slithering higher. If it was wrapped in layers of betrayal and orchestrated beneath a facade of friendship, Emily and I were vulnerable, far too exposed to the machinations of someone I once trusted. I turned back to her, anxiety breeding in my chest. "Emily, if we don't figure out what's going on, if we don't confront Henry, we will never be safe." This is the moment, but the words faltered when I noticed the flicker of indecision in her eyes, a hint of fear pulling her back from the precipice of resolution. "But I can't," her voice was strained. "What if he knows?" As if summoned by her doubt, the sound of footsteps approached. A figure loomed toward the alley's mouth, and the shadows thickened around us. "Emily!" A soft voice broke through the darkness, the figure stepping into view, and my heart sank. The last person I had expected, yet in strange twist of fate, standing at the precipice of our choices, bearing a secret bound in time and tension. "Jane!" I gasped, caught between overwhelming surprise and the need to shield Emily from yet another possible betrayal. What was she doing here, and why now? Her expression, filled with a mix of urgency and fear, twisted the knots in my stomach tighter. "We have to go. He's coming for you both." And just when I thought we were on the brink of solving the puzzle, unraveling the truth that bound our lives together and horrified us apart, I realized that with whomever we chose to trust, danger loomed ever nearer, and the cliff of our reality was crumbling beneath us. The shadows shifted uneasily around us, the alley swallowed by a suffocating quiet punctuated only by the distant cacophony of chaos. My heart raced not only for the impending threat of our pursuers but also for the weight of Jane's unexpected presence. Her plea pulled at me, yet confusion clouded my judgment. "Why are you here, Jane?" I managed, my voice hoarse. "You shouldn't have come." She stepped closer, a fragile glimmer of resolve in her eyes, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something vital was being left unsaid. "Because her voice trembled slightly, "I've seen what Henry is planning. He's not just after you, he wants to hurt everyone he feels has betrayed him, especially those close to you." Emily's grip on my arm tightened, spurred by Jane's words. "What do you know?" she demanded, her voice a mix of fear and determination. "More than I should," Jane responded, glancing back toward the alley's entrance, the echoing chaos a reminder of our dwindling time. "But I can't explain everything now. Just trust me when I say, if we don't leave, if we don't face this together, it will end with someone we love in danger." I thought it was just a bad breakup, but it's far worse. Something unspooled in my chest at the thought of Emily in danger. The emotion that twisted my gut now teetered precariously between dread and a burgeoning will to fight back. "Where do we go?" I pressed, trying to make sense of it all, trying to rein in the fear that threatened to cloud our judgment. There's a safe house a few streets over. But we have to move now, and you have to stay close, Jane insisted, urgency spilling from her every word. Before I could respond, the sound of shuffling footsteps echoed from the entrance of the alley, of heavy boots dragging closer with purpose. My thoughts raced, all the connections, the past betrayals, the sharp pang of distrust, all of it now swirling in a tempest around Jane, around Henry, around us. We can't stay here, I whispered hoarsely. Emily, let's go. We turned to make our escape, hearts pounding as we slipped deeper into the shadows. But as we emerged onto the street, my breath caught at the sight ahead. The once bustling boulevard lay transformed into a tableau of panic and fear, illuminated by flashing lights and the frantic shouts of emergency personnel. It felt like a dream looping into another nightmare. Where do we go? Emily murmured, our sanctuary quickly dissolving before our eyes. There. Jane directed, pointing toward a narrow side street shrouded in darkness, a beacon of anonymity amongst the chaos. Quickly, I grabbed Emily's hand instinctively, leading the way. As we darted into the cover of night, I felt a swell of emotions: fear for our safety, anger at the hands that had orchestrated this madness, and an undying commitment to keep Emily safe above all else. The three of us pushed on, the tension palpable, weaving through labyrinthine alleys with Jane guiding us like a reluctant compass. With each step, the weight of uncertainty settled deeper, but so did strange flickers of hope, moments of kindness from strangers, brief smiles in the chaos, and shared resolve. Yet, just as hope sparked like a fragile flame, it flickered when we reached an unmarked door. Jane paused, her breath shallow and eyes darting. This is it, but I need to tell you something before we go in. What is it? I asked, my heart racing to a dissonant beat, an ominous omen coursing through the air. It's about Henry, she whispered, her voice trembling. He's not just my brother's best friend. Something happened between us, something that made him feel betrayed, and it twisted into this nightmare. I never wanted you to be caught up in this. I came to warn you both, but Jane, don't, I started, but she pressed on, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. That I love you, and I should have told you that sooner, she confessed, her voice cracking. But I was scared and didn't want to ruin our friendship. But if we don't make it through this, I need you to know that. The rush of feelings spiraled into confusion, especially as I turned to see Emily's expression, her face pale, hurt, and indignant all at once. The shock of Jane's revelation hung like a dense fog between us, and I felt the fraying edges of our fragile alliance tighten dangerously. Before I could respond, a loud crash resonated from behind us, the unmistakable sound of shouts growing nearer. My instinct kicked in, compelling me to pull Emily to me, but the universe seemed to conspire against us, shattering our desperate need for clarity. Now! Jane urged, her voice piercing through the panic, but just as I grasped the handle of the door, a deafening crack rang out. I turned just in time to see the flash of a weapon as the gunman emerged from the shadows, a malicious glint in his eye that fixed upon Emily and me. The truth will find you whether you want it or not. The door I clutched felt like the final barrier between safety and chaos. But as I reached for the handle, a massive force slammed into my back, propelling me forward just as another shot fired. The world blurred as I crashed through the door, only to have that world close behind with a sickening finality that chilled me to the bone. Inside, new dangers awaited. But I was left with an inescapable truth: every choice from here on out would only unravel more secrets, reshape alliances, and reveal the depth of betrayals that cut deeper than I could have ever imagined. I lay on the floor, breathless, the taste of adrenaline still bitter on my tongue. The door slammed shut behind me, a final barrier to the chaos outside, but it couldn't shield me from the storm of emotions raging within me. I was disoriented, wrestling with confusion, fear, and the weight of decisions looming over all of us. That I pushed myself up, grasping for clarity, and caught sight of Emily across the dimly lit room. She stood against the far wall, her expression torn between rage and betrayal. The air buzzed with unspoken words, a lightning charge pulsing between us. All at once, it felt as if the walls had closed in, trapping us in a theater of our own making, with shadows creeping in to play their parts. Emily, I didn't want to put you in danger, I began, my voice shaky but earnest as I took a step forward. Jane, just what? She interrupted, her voice thick with hurt. Confess to loving you? To being a part of all this? Her gaze flicked to Jane, standing in the doorway, uncertain yet defiant. How could you not tell me? I didn't know, I stammered, frustration flooding my system. I thought it was just a friendship. I swear, I was focused on us, on keeping you safe. But now everything is unraveling. And you think I should have felt secure while you were keeping secrets? She replied, eyes blazing with emotion. How can I trust you when nothing about this situation is what it seems? She's telling the truth, Jane chimed in, stepping closer, a flicker of panic lining her voice. Henry doesn't just want to hurt Yoha, wants everything you hold dear. And he's using this chaos to do it. Why would I believe anything you've said? Emily spat, the tension between them crackling in the air, because she's the only one who came to warn us. I retorted, desperation lining my tone. And whether you like it or not, we're all entangled in this mess together. Of all times, now is not the time to turn against each other. The silence hung, heavy as an anvil. Emily's eyes softened slightly, but the walls of hurt she had built were still firm. What do we do now? She whispered, her voice small yet powerful, the plea of a heart that was tired of battles. We fight back, I said, grounding my resolve. I turned towards Jane, urgency building. You have to tell us everything, every detail about Henry, about his plans, about how we can stop him. Together. No more secrets. Jane glanced back at the door, the faintest sound of distant sirens still echoing in the grim corner of the alley that now felt like our cage. Henry has eyes everywhere. He knows I followed you, knows I care, and he'll stop at nothing to halt anyone who stands in his way. His wrath is far-reaching. What about the chaos outside? Emily pushed, the calm center beneath the storm of fears swirling around us. What was all that about? It wasn't just an act of desperation, it was a distraction. A calculated move, Jane replied, indignation creeping into her voice. He's orchestrating this to unleash chaos in a bid for control, removing every obstacle in his path while painting himself as the savior. A masked figure confronting the world's ills, legs trembling with both rage and determination. I made a decision in that moment, feeling the ember of hope stirring. Jane, if we expose his motives, if we unravel his web of deceptions, we'll have the power we need to tear down his empire together. It's time. We turn the tide. Emily stepped closer to me, and the fragile line that separated us began to blur. I don't want to lose you, she whispered, clutching my hand like a lifeline. Can we really do this? Stand together against someone so powerful? We have to, I replied, the ghost of Henry's laughter echoing in my mind, a reminder of the darkness we faced. Together, we share that strength. It's now or never. Just then, the unmistakable sound of footsteps thundered against the hallway, and the tension shattered. We were running out of time. I pulled Emily protectively against me, Jane beside her, the three of us forming a wall against whatever horrors had yet to unfold. We stick together, no matter what, I said, and as reality seeped in and the danger loomed closer, I felt a sliver of hope blossom amidst the despair. As the door creaked open, we braced ourselves, a trio of guardians in a city unraveling at the seams. Wherever they led us, we would face it united. Emily and Jane shared a glance, a flicker of understanding sparking between them, a flicker that felt like acceptance and resolve. Let's do this, Emily murmured. Clutching her hand tighter, I gave a small nod, and together we stepped into the unknown, determined to reclaim our lives from the grasp of betrayal. And just as we moved forward into the fading light, I couldn't shake the feeling that as beautiful as it was to share this moment, a new battle loomed ahead. A revelation would soon rise through the ashes of our confrontation, a truth we perhaps weren't prepared to face. But deep down, I felt a profound change stirring within me, a shift to confront the very darkness I had once fled from, and maybe, just maybe, breaking free from the veil of shadows would unravel a path to the light we so desperately sought. It was never just about survival or battling Henry's ambitions, it was the fight to reclaim ourselves, to forge a future we deeply deserved. As the door swung open, revealing the chaos erupting beyond, the warmth of their presence ignited a flame against the abyss. Together, we would journey into the storm, ready to uncover the truth. Because sometimes, in battling the darkness, we discover the strength we never knew existed within. And sometimes, that truth is the only thing that can save us. I realized then, every question had its answer, and all that remained was to unveil the tapestry of deceit that threatened to ensnare us. And as we stepped into the battlefield of shadows, I silently vowed we would emerge whole again. But no one said it would come without a cost. And as we advanced into the wild unknown, the most profound truths often come at the very edge of our breaking point.